It's very nice.
Beautiful.
I was
So
going to compliment you actually, but
yeah.
because I thought you painted it.
Oh, so at least I saved it from
Yeah.
destruction. And thanks again, Miriam, for doing this.
Oh yeah, thank you for thinking of me and including me. It's truly a pleasure.
Ronnie is the one who suggested you. And then
Thank
He
you,
should
Ronnie.
be here. He's making himself presentable and he'll come stop by. That's what he told me.
And I realized, I think we had met at the big chocolate conference. So
Yeah.
in every year, I guess when there's not a pandemic, there's this amazing chocolate conference at the Javits Center in New York, which is it's enormous. And I went to it for the first time 2 years ago, and just one chocolate company after another and row after row. It was quite amazing. And among them was Miriam. And so,
that was our first time there. It was wild.
Yeah.
Like we've been to other trade shows and things like that, and kind of know what to expect. This was insane. I mean, we sold out of everything we brought in the first 3 hours or so. And we were only there one day because it was Saturday, Sunday.
2 days, right? It was
we only did Sunday. And so we're gonna have to do more next this year.
Sounds good. Let's see. Hello.
Hello,
everybody. Hi, Miriam. I don't know if you remember, my kids did a session with you.
Yes. It's so nice to see you.
Likewise. I'm very happy.
Josh, and thank you.
I'm happy this worked out.
Yes, I was just saying that Miriam is so wonderful that you suggested her. So.
Yeah, I mean, just because they came back and they just how she explained things. I said, I think she's probably the good person for this because she gets
thank you.
Level.
I'm looking forward to the second half of this event.
When we actually talk together.
You're the first half, is that it?
Hey, it's history. It's history.
I'm looking forward to the first half because I just know a very small tidbit of the topic, so I'm excited to go more in depth and learn more.
Okay, well, I try to cover a lot briefly, but we'll see.
Okay. Before I open, Josh, do you want me to send you the proposal overview of Global in the South? I know it's totally off topic, but.
For the, yeah, you can email it to me anytime you want.
Okay. Sure. I will send it to you. And Ronnie, I just sent you the bios. If it's up to you.
Gladly.
Okay. Gladly. Excellent. Okay. And Miriam, I have nothing to send to you, but if you want, I can send you something.
Nice pictures or whatever you got, it's all good.
I'll think of something fun.
Yeah, Jorah's doing events just so many of them. I don't know how you do it. So many interesting.
I'm not sure either sometimes.
One after another on all kinds of topics.
That's fun. Okay, I'm going to open so you guys can keep talking, but I'm just going to open.
And Joshua, how long has this project been in the works? The book?
The book, well, I published the first version, gosh, I think it was almost 2 years ago, the 2019 edition. And then I just published a revision, 2021 revision, along with a coffee guide. So a companion book that's very similar. Did I ever give you or send you the chocolate guide?
No, I'd love to see it.
I'd be happy to send you a copy.
Okay.
So I'll get your address afterwards. Oh, and you too, Miriam. Does
this dovetail with any job part of your life? Like, is this?
Well, I'm trying to build a publishing business. So I have 2 books now. A guide to chocolate and a guide to coffee. Oh, and I'm just about to issue a calendar, like a hanging wall calendar on coffee. So it features for each month a beautiful painting that happens to have coffee in it, whether it's Van Gogh or Pissarro, some other famous painters.
Oh, fabulous.
And, so that's the latest addition to the,
Oh, and you see the drawer is going to be having an Egyptian cafe in a little bit.
Oh yeah, I just glanced at that. That looks so neat.
Really cool. Dror, you know what's interesting about that also is that I guess it's the time. It's something the zeitgeist, because there was an excellent book that came out about coffee houses in Europe.
In Europe.
Pinsker, Shai Pinsker, I think. His was more European based and more Eastern European, I think. But I heard an interview with him. It's fascinating. And so maybe we, at a future point, we can have them both on. We can talk about.
Sure, he'd love that. Alone's in Colombia now.
Who? Oh,
Alone, the lecturer.
On the search for coffee or for fun?
No, Columbia University.
Oh, Columbia University. Yeah. I think coffee. I go to Columbia.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. That's why.
Sorry about that. And chocolate. There's some excellent chocolate from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was a brand for a while that I would find. I think I first found it at Fairway from Santander in that had a hechsher. It was like amazing, and the price was like very, very moderate, and it was just such good chocolate from Colombia, like single origin ones, and it was good stuff.
I'm actually in the process of developing a line of single origin bars, and Colombia is one of my is on my short list. So
wow.
Yeah.
How would you choose one or the other? Like, how would you just go about that?
I have a lot of samples around me and tasting, and really my goal is to try and give people a variety to really understand the experience of how different they can be based on where chocolate is grown.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing the variety and the.
Basically trying to help people understand that Portuguese is not chocolate,
No, come on. I know that's the
I hope that we're past that stage.
I mean, my bias is showing, but
Hershey's is chocolate, but it's not good chocolate. I mean,
I'm okay with Hershey's. My son told me that's his favorite. I think he did it just to give me a dig, but
of course.
But Portuguese is like a whole other level of not chocolate.
Yeah, no, that's not.
Right, you see that in the chocolate chips, right? It's amazing, like the variety. If you go to a kosher market and you see the variety of quality, levels of quality in the chocolate chips, it's thankfully there's a lot of good options, but there's so many bad ones that are just like oil and sugar and some coloring. And
yeah, exactly. That's part of what I enjoy actually in the classes that I teach here that your kids did, Ronnie. Just showing people what good chocolate should be and should taste like, especially if they've come from a kosher background and haven't really experienced that yet. So,
right.
Yeah, but you can't really find Parv chocolate chips that are good chocolate chips in America. In Israel, you can.
No, I found this, especially this stuff. There were some really good ones. Yeah, like 60. Hey, they're not. I don't know. They're chocolate chips. Ultimately, you're throwing them into a cookie, but
right.
But it's like I found ones 60%.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know.
Trader Joe's has some really good, 72% chocolate chips that are excellent.
Yeah.
That are Parv? I thought they went dairy.
They went dairy, and now they're back to Parv.
Oh, so I did not know that because I haven't been there. There you go.
Trader Joe's will always save us.
Right.
Did I just say heresy that I dismissed, the importance of the quality of a chocolate chip as opposed to, did I?
Yeah, I think people are meandering in slowly as it has to do with chocolate. Maybe they're grabbing their chocolate. So we're going to give everybody a few more moments. Yeah, that's one of the things in the Egypt Cafe. We're sending out samples. See, we should have done that for this, and then everybody would have come.
I'm actually participating as an attendee, not a participant, tomorrow in tasting with Valrhona of their Madagascar chocolate, and they sent us all like a kit of a whole bunch of and they kept sending emails. Don't open it yet. Don't open it yet. You have to. Can't open it yet. All right, fine.
But that's really fun. I did that with the wine tasting about a few months ago.
And
that's where I had the idea for the cafe. They sent tiny bottles of wine. And we did a wine tasting. It was fun.
I had a great, a very fun morning at the Benjamina. It's the Tishby Winery, but in Benjamina. And our friends got stuck in traffic and they said, oh, go to the tasting room. You know, we were going to meet them for lunch. Go to the tasting room. So we were there with all our kids. And they're so smart because their wine tasting room has Valrhona chocolate. They also are the distributors of Valrhona in Israel. And so it was great. So we had chocolate and wine at 10:30 in the morning instead of brunch until my friend showed up. It was a lot of fun. But
Awesome.
So I'm torn here because there are people registered who are late. But I don't like to make people wait who come on time. So maybe what do you think, 2 minutes? And then we'll start, and with your permission, I'll send them the ones who are late to recording, and then they can see the beginning, if that's okay.
Makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, just, people are here. It's not nice to make them wait. And hopefully everybody brought their chocolate with them, But then you have to justify what kind of chocolate it is. Is that it? Is that what we were just talking about? Is you have to justify.
You don't want to put anyone on the spot,
Well, when we were just told if it's a Hershey bar, it's okay. So.
Yeah.
We heard it from the expert.
I mean, yeah, there are different philosophies. Like with coffee, there's different philosophies also, right? There are people who appreciate even, truck stop coffee for what it is. It's its own thing,
Not my thing. Not that I'm a connoisseur or anything, but just
Troy, did you send the links to the three people?
You want to check that they got them? Because it's weird, right?
Yeah, we had an event last night that for some reason the system closed registration at the time that the event started, which.
No, but people are registered here.
I know. But it was bad. I had a couple people who tried to sign on a few minutes late, and then I didn't know till to this morning that they couldn't get on, which was unfortunate. But kinks in the system.
Okay. Well, I'm going to welcome the people who are here, and we're going to now people are coming in. I guess 5 minutes is the magic number.
Lunchtime.
So I want to say thank you so much to everybody who's here, and particularly to Josh and to Miriam, who are going to be sharing with us their brilliance on chocolate. And yes, even with the kind of higher level understanding of it, I still think you're going to have a deep appreciation just of the taste. So I want to make sure. I am definitely not a chocolate connoisseur, but I love my chocolate. So I'm looking forward to learning a bit about how my Jewish history plays into it and what I need to know. So welcome everybody, and we're happy to be doing this as we did the whole Global Nacao together with the Schneier International Center from Yeshiva University. And Professor Ronnie Perellis. So I will let him take over as of now. If you have any questions, please throw them into the chat. Excuse me. Please throw them into the chat or the Q&A. I will be monitoring it, but we will open up the microphones and cameras at the end. We will allow you to open them up at the end in case you want to participate in a conversation after the presentation. So thank you all for coming, and Ronnie, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Dora, and thank you, ASF, for continuing to put on these fascinating, diverse topics and presenting them for the world to explore. When we buy a bar of chocolate or order a cappuccino, we're really participating in a global historical phenomenon. We don't think of it that way. We think about the taste, we think about the warmth, we think about the feeling it gives us, but actually all these products have fascinating, complex histories that point to the biggest movements in the last couple hundred years, voyages of discovery, colonization, and the global market that we are all a part of today. And so for that reason, what seems on the surface is just a fun topic is going to enlighten us for sure today. And for that reason, I'm so happy to partner with ASF, to have the Rabbi Arthur Schneier Program in International Affairs, partner with ASF on this program and so many of the other wonderful programs we have. And I want to just introduce our guest here today. And I'm sorry, I had it right here. So first, Joshua de Sola Mendez is the publisher of Graham's Guide to Chocolate Around the World, available here on Amazon, as well on his online guide to chocolate, grahamschocolateguide.com. He's also a proud member of Congregation Shereth Israel in New York, who has sought to bring the sister S&P communities around the world together through his website, S&P Central. It's www.and spelled out A-N-D, central.org. It's a great resource for those of you who are either longtime members or honorary members, or have affinity for the Nacao, for the network of Spanish and Portuguese synagogues. It's a great resource. And I'm really excited to hear more about the history of chocolate through Joshua's guiding us today. Miriam Gittleman is chef and owner of Coco Jolie, the realization of a lifelong dream. After 20 years as a design and technology professional, Miriam had the opportunity to pursue her true passion. The chocolate she creates provides a luxurious, thought-provoking taste and visual experience. They are also fair trade, organic, and certified kosher. And I can tell you, not only are they delicious, like high-level deliciousness on all levels, but her design background comes out. I mean, they are stunning. They're just stunning. And I have a personal stake because not only have I eaten this chocolate, my children, two of my children who love to bake, had a great experience with Miriam, where she kind of did a online, in person. It was amazing that it was in person, workshop on chocolate making. And this shop is a beautiful little shop right in Englewood, New Jersey, for those of you who are there. And I'm really excited to see what the synergy between you two today. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Can everyone see the slide?
Yes, we see it perfectly.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dora. Thank you so much, Professor Perellis. My name is Joshua Mendez, and I am, as Professor Perellis mentioned, the founder of Graham's Guides, publisher of Graham's Guide to Chocolate Around the World, and now a second book just launched, Graham's Guide to Coffee Around the World. It's really an honor to be with all of you today. I am such an admirer of the American Sephardi Federation and Drora Arusi, who with her daughter Dahlia worked so hard to put together all kinds of amazing events. Also so honored to be joined by Miriam Gittleman of Coco Jolie Fine Chocolates and Confections, who is going to take over the second half of this presentation. I'm going to tell you about the history of chocolate and Jewish participation in it, and she's going to tell you how chocolate is actually made. I have a feeling that's going to be a lot more exciting to watch. So anyway, let's get started. Today, we're going to look at the wonderful history of chocolate to start with, and the important role that Jews have actually played in its history. It can be safely said that few things unite the world as much as chocolate. It's the globe's most popular sweet, with more than 3 million tons of cocoa beans consumed each year. So how is it that this lush, intensively flavorful food has become so popular in every corner of the world? And who are some of the key people who helped to make it so popular? So that's what we're going to dive into today. And interestingly, we will find that Jews have made very significant contributions toward that popularity. Is a cheerful looking fellow. Chocolate's story begins in South America with the Olmec Indians of southern Mexico around 1500 BCE. It's believed that the Olmecs began to grow the first crop of cocoa beans, fermenting, roasting, and grinding them for consumption as hot drinks. We know this, interestingly, not from any written history from them, but because there isn't, but rather because archaeologists have found traces of cocoa in their drinking vessels. Eventually, the Olmecs passed their knowledge of cocoa onto the Mayans in Central America, who not only consumed chocolate, they revered it. Mayan written history mentions chocolate drinks being used in celebrations as well as for important business transactions. Rarely did they add sweeteners, rather they used a variety of herbs ranging from chili and vanilla to magnolia. The Mayans, in turn, passed along their knowledge of cocoa along to the Aztecs. The Aztecs liked to flavor the drink with such spices also as chili, but also cinnamon, pepper, and vanilla. The Aztecs believed cocoa was a gift to them from their god Quetzalcoatl. But unlike the Maya, the Aztecs drank their chocolate cold, consuming it for a variety of purposes, such as an aphrodisiac or as a treat at banquets. And it was also included in the rations of Aztec soldiers, which shows you just how important it was. So just so you can see what it looks like, here's an Aztec chocolate drink recipe that I found online. Until now, knowledge of chocolate was limited entirely to the Americas. But as some European explorers began venturing to South America, they too discovered the wonders of the cocoa beans. In 1519, explorer Hernando Cortez arrived in Mexico to find the Aztecs drinking this red, bitter drink made with cocoa. Recognizing its value, both as a medicinal and something of monetary value, he began sending it back to Spain. And on his fourth visit to the New World, Christopher Columbus also discovered cocoa beans given to him by the locals, and he brought them back to King Ferdinand. There was yet another set of explorers arriving in South America, and these were the Spanish and Portuguese Jews, fleeing the Inquisition, begun in 1492 with the infamous Alhambra decree expelling them. So, on the one hand, Spain's monarchs, Ferdinand and Isabella, were sending explorers off to search the far corners of the earth, and at the same time, sadly, driving some 300,000 Jews from their borders. So where did all these Jews go? Some escaped to the east, settling in the Ottoman Empire, where the Sultan gladly welcomed them, or to the Maghreb in North Africa. Others went west to the Netherlands, England, and Italy, or across the ocean to New York and other cities on the east coast of North America. But perhaps the most adventurous of them went to the Caribbean and to South America. And unlike their Gentile counterparts, who often sought to conquer the natives and convert them to Christianity, the Jews, or conversos, were simply seeking commercial opportunity. So as a result, the locals were more favorably disposed to interact with them, and eventually to share their knowledge of cocoa and how to process it. Among these Jewish adventurers were the brothers David and Rafael Mercado. Living what is in present-day Guyana, they first became involved with sugar, inventing early machinery for processing it. But unfortunately, they were so good that the Dutch authorities decided to prohibit them from that business. So instead, they began trading cocoa and ended up controlling Mexico's burgeoning chocolate business. Another Jewish chocolate pioneer fleeing the Inquisition was Benjamin da Costa de Andrade, creator of the first cocoa processing plant. Andrade had moved to Dutch Brazil in the 1600s so he could practice Judaism again openly, but when the Portuguese captured that area in 1645, he fled again, this time to the Caribbean island of Martinique, where he traded cocoa, and soon he and other Jewish traders controlled Martinique's booming cocoa business. Inevitably, these enterprising Jewish traders returned to Europe equipped with their knowledge of chocolate and began producing it for the European market. Their main base of activity was the small village of Saint-Esprit next to Bayonne in southern France. Spanish and Portuguese Jews had come there in 1550 at the invitation of King Henry II, who allowed them to live there as quote unquote new Christians, technically Christian, but still adhering to their Jewish faith at home. But by the 1630s, there were approximately 60 converso Jewish families living around Bayonne. Some names associated with the chocolate trade there included Emile and Isaac Pereira, Alvaro and Jacome Luis, and Aaron Colache, among others. Sadly, once the French population learned how to make chocolate, they eventually banned the Jews from the trade. Meanwhile, the popularity of this new chocolate drink, which the Jews had helped to introduce in Europe, continued to grow. Just as in South America, Europeans appreciated its revitalizing qualities. It was consumed as a hot drink almost solely by the aristocracy and upper classes, flavored with such things as sugar, vanilla, cinnamon, in keeping with European tastes. And it was typically sold in marble-sized balls, like the ones you see on the screen there, that one could simply drop into a glass. Meanwhile, across the ocean in colonial America, chocolate was also becoming a hit. In 1670, two Boston ladies, Dorothy Jones and Jane Barnard, were given permission to open a, quote, house of public entertainment for the selling of coffee and chocolate. The first colonial chocolate manufacturer was Baker's, established in 1765 in Dorchester, Massachusetts, and it actually still exists today. Turns out chocolate was a huge favorite among America's founders. Benjamin Franklin sold chocolate out of his print shop, and George and Martha Washington enjoyed it regularly at their home in Mount Vernon. And Thomas Jefferson is quoted as saying, "The superiority of chocolate, both for health and nourishment, will soon give it the same preference over tea and coffee in America, which it has in Spain." In the New World, a brisk chocolate trade was also blossoming, with Sephardi families playing a prominent role, bringing cocoa beans to New York from the Caribbean. Some names there included the Lopez family, headed by Aaron Lopez, seen here on this slide. Born in Lisbon in 1731 to a converso Jewish family, Lopez made his way across the ocean to Newport, where he became one of the founders of the Truro Synagogue. Lopez was also an ardent supporter of the American Revolution against Britain. In one of his letters at the time, he writes that shortages due to the revolution were especially hard on kosher-keeping Jews who were forced to subsist on chocolate and coffee. In New York, meanwhile, the Gomez family had also become quite important in the chocolate trade. Fleeing the Inquisition, Luis Gomez had arrived in New York in 1696, initially engaging in the fur trade, but later he turned to chocolate, thanks in large part to his wife, Rebecca. After his death, Rebecca ran the business and advertised her chocolate in local newspapers, as you can see here on the slide. I don't know if you can read that, but it's very sweet to read. And there were other women also selling chocolate at the time, but Rebecca was the only one who actually manufactured it. Now we get to the soccer tort. While Sephardim were involved early in the development of chocolate, they were not alone in the Jewish world. So I don't know who knows what a soccer tort is, but if you don't know, it's a delicious type of chocolate cake with a middle layer of jam, just as in the picture here. And it was invented by Franz Soccer, a young Jewish apprentice in the kitchen of Prince von Metternich of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In 1832, the prince wished to give a special banquet and wanted a special dessert to impress his guests. With the main cook out sick, it fell to Franz Soccer to come up with something, and the cake he created was an immediate hit. So much that dessert chefs around the world still make it today. In fact, my mother used to make it, and I remember it very well. Up until now, chocolate was limited to royalty. However, as a result of various manufacturing innovations in the 1800s, chocolate started to become available to everyone. Here you can see a few milestones. In 1828, Dutchman Conrad van Houten invented a revolutionary process for producing powder that can dissolve easily in liquids, widely known, as we all know, as Dutch cocoa. In 1848, Englishman Joseph Fry created the first chocolate bar by adding back melted cocoa butter. And in 1861, another Englishman, Richard Cadbury, introduced the first heart-shaped box of chocolates, especially for Valentine's Day. And in 1875, Switzerland's Daniel Peter created the first milk chocolate by adding in a milk powder. As I mentioned earlier, chocolate was often appreciated for its medicinal qualities, and many of its early makers were actually pharmacists. You've probably heard of Neuhaus chocolates. Well, its founder, Jean Neuhaus, was a Swiss pharmacist who began covering pills in chocolate to make them easier to swallow, but he also offered dark chocolate tablets, which turned out to be so popular that he eventually turned his pharmacy into a sweet shop, and the rest, of course, is history. Also, if you look closely at the array of these advertisements in an 1896 edition of the Druggist Circular and Chemical Gazette, you can see an ad for Hershey's soluble chocolate, full strength, warranted absolutely pure, merits all of our claims. And at the bottom is an ad by Colonial Druggist in London for Sir Hans Sloane's milk chocolate, quote, greatly recommended by several eminent physicians for its lightness on the stomach and its great use in all consumptive cases. And for those who don't know, consumptive, that refers to tuberculosis. Also, the advertising for chocolate around the world during this period of time is really remarkable, almost like artwork. So just thought you might like to see a few of these examples. When we arrive at the 1900s, as the evil of Nazism led to the Jewish exodus from Europe, we see the rise of a few prominent new Jewish chocolate makers. One example is Eliyahu from Nacao, who had owned a candy store in Latvia. In 1933, he arrived in then Palestine, where he founded Elite Chocolate, today one of Israel's best-known chocolate makers. A few years later, another European chocolatier, Stephen Klein, fled Vienna after a Nazi competitor had seized a chocolate company, and he settled in New York with his wife, children, and 5 brothers and 2 sisters, all in one small apartment. And from that apartment, Klein would go on to create Barton's, growing it into one of the dominant chocolate makers in the US for many years. What these Jewish chocolate makers also made possible was the availability of kosher chocolate, which was a rarity at that time. Following World War II, the chocolate market saw the rise of a few mega brands such as Hershey, Godiva, Cadbury, and so on, which almost entirely dominate the chocolate business. But now, in this more recent period, things have come full circle. In the past 10 years or so, we have seen a return to the smaller, more entrepreneurial, often family-owned chocolate makers, including a number of kosher ones. And that brings us to Miriam. I could go on with some of these other details, but I think this would be a good time to turn it over to Miriam to tell us about her chocolate making in the present. We've looked at a lot of chocolate making in the past, but let's find out how it actually happens today. And I'm so delighted to be able to share this with her and sit back and listen and learn. So over to you, Miriam.
Thank you so much, Josh. And thank you, Ronnie and Dora, for including me in this wonderful presentation. It's truly a pleasure. There's nothing better than sharing what you love with other people. So I'm just going to put on the presentation and we will jump right into it. Let me just get to the full screen here. Okay, there we go. So just a very quick background, as Ronnie alluded to, chocolate is my third career really, and a true joy to be able to do what I love. On the screen here, you just see an example of some of the bonbons that we make. And let's dive right in. So chocolate is grows on a tree, and primarily in countries around the equator. So Central South America, Africa, kind of Caribbean islands and nations and things of that nature. Just as an interesting aside, most of the chocolate that is mass produced in the United States, the beans, the cacao beans, are primarily from Africa. So Ivory Coast, Ghana, Tanzania, places like that. And the large companies like Hershey's or M&M Mars own their own plantations. So they're not buying from other smaller cacao farmers. They're actually cultivating their own cacao for producing their own products. Okay, whoops, sorry about that. All right. So just to show you a picture of what a cacao tree looks like, you can see the pods growing on the trees. It takes a couple of years, 2-3 years for the trees to mature, to start bearing fruit. And there are about 3 main species of cacao that are grown for production and consumption. Here's a little bit more of a close-up view of what the pods look like.
Miriam, sorry to disturb. Yeah. I don't think it's this. The image is not being shared.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Hang on a second.
Yeah. I think you gotta.
That's not good. Give me 1 second here.
Sure.
Sorry, guys.
No, we still don't have it. There we go.
You see it now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Let me just quickly then back to where we were. So this was just the intro screen. Those are my chocolates. And then here's the map where you can see that line, the equator, sort of the countries above and below where cacao primarily is grown. And again, here are what the trees look like. They're not very big. They're not very big or very tall. They're kind of like low and squat. And here's where we were. This is a close-up of what a cacao pod looks like. As I mentioned, there are 3 primary species, and they are slightly different in color. So like this one is predominantly red, but they can also be yellow, orange, and sort of gradations or gradients of those colors. Okay. So after the cacao is cut off of the tree, typically with like a machete, really, the pod is hacked open. And this is what it looks like inside. So you would look at this and you would say, oh my goodness, this looks absolutely nothing like chocolate. What the heck is this thing? Which is really just a prelude to tell you that there are so many steps involved between the moment it comes off the tree until you put a yummy piece of chocolate in your mouth. So as you can see, it's actually surrounded, the beans, each little piece there is a cacao bean. And they are all encased in this sort of white, slimy membrane. It's not particularly attractive. But what most of the farmers do is they'll open the pod with the machete. They'll throw the outside peel back on the ground around the trees, basically acting as compost for the cacao trees. So once the pods are opened and the beans are extracted, you can see here that everything is really done by hand from start to finish. You can see the beans are removed from that white membrane, and they're put in big vats, typically made out of organic material like wood, and often covered with organic material like banana leaves or other vegetation. And they're fermented for about a week or so. If you can see on the image on the right-hand side, it's a little hard to make out, but there's actually a thermometer stuck in the middle of that big vat of cacao beans. Because during the fermentation process, the temperature is constantly being monitored as well. And depending on what kind of chocolate or what elements of the bean the farmer or the chocolate maker wants to kind of highlight, they may increase or decrease very slightly the length of fermentation. as well as several other steps in the process, which we're about to see. So after the beans are fermented, they're actually dried out in the sun on these big racks or kind of big areas of flat land. They're dried out in the sun for about a week. And during that time, you'll see these women have these, they're like rakes, and they're raking through the beans to ensure that they're turned over and that, every part of the bean is exposed to the sun and that everything is dried evenly and correctly. So at that point, so now we're at about like two to 3 weeks after the cacao pod has been cut off the tree. At that point now, they are ready to ship around the world. Typically they're put in like burlap sacks, as you can see here on the left, and they're shipped all over. And like I said, the big guys, the Hershey's, the M&Rs and so forth, they grow their own. But oftentimes on the bag itself, it will say, what country it's from, product of Ecuador, product of, Ghana, whatever it is. And oftentimes the specific farm or plantation. And if you ever heard the term single origin chocolate, what that really refers to is that all the beans that are used in making that chocolate are from one location. So single origin chocolate from Madagascar, or single origin chocolate from Peru. That means that all of the beans, the cacao beans that were used to make that chocolate, come from that country. And sometimes you can even get more local than that in terms of the origin. And you can, it may say on the packaging or on the bar that it's from a specific region of the country or even a specific plantation, a specific farm. So there are various, grades of how single origin your origin can be. So after they're shipped all over the world, this is the state that the chocolate maker will get it in. And just a quick clarification, the difference between a chocolate maker and a chocolatier. So a chocolate maker is someone who takes the product from the state of the bean, which we just looked at, from the bean state, and takes it through all the subsequent steps that I'll show you in a moment to get it to be chocolate that you could consume. And a chocolatier is someone who takes it from that consumable state and does other things with it. So I'm a chocolatier. I don't make my own chocolate from the bean. I purchase chocolate that's already been converted from the bean into edible chocolate, and I melt it down and temper it and do all kinds of other stuff to it, depending on what type of product I'm making. So after the beans are shipped, the chocolate maker will typically roast them. You'll see on the left-hand side, there's it's a big roasting machine, and it rotates again so that the beans are evenly roasted. There are some chocolatiers some chocolate makers who have a different philosophy, who actually don't roast their beans. I think it's very similar to winemaking, where you'll have different philosophies and sort of different approaches depending on what the end result, what that end result that they're looking for to achieve. Maybe they want to kind of distinguish themselves from other chocolate makers, in terms of their process and their product. So there's different philosophies on that. But overall, most chocolate is made by first roasting the beans, and then they go through a process called winnowing. So on the cacao bean, there's like this outer shell. It's very thin. It's kind of like a thin papery shell. And winnowing is the process of removing that outer shell. There's a machine that does this. It's typically not done by hand. That would be a lot of work. And then after it is winnowed, they start to grind it. So what you see here on the left is a grinder. It's typically like a stone grinders that will go and start to take the beans from that whole bean state and turn it slowly but surely into really more of a liquid state. But at this point, it still is very grainy, still like a lot of granularity to it. And so after it goes through the grinding process, and again, how long it's ground can depend on what end result the chocolate maker is looking to achieve. But after the grinding process, typically the cocoa butter, which is the natural fat in the cacao bean, is extracted. So what you see on the right-hand side is a hydraulic press that is separating out the fat, the cocoa butter, from what's called the cocoa mass or the cocoa solids. So the cocoa mass or the cocoa solids is the brown part of chocolate, and the cocoa butter is the fat. And a lot of times, I'm sure you've heard, or maybe you've asked yourself, is white chocolate really chocolate? Well, white chocolate is just the cocoa butter, the fat, with sugar and milk solids added. So white chocolate doesn't have any of the cacao solids or the cocoa mass. That's why it's white and not brown. So just a little info for you there. So after this process, after this grinding and the extraction of the cocoa butter, it goes through another process called conching. So conching is like the second grind. Once it goes through the initial grinding process, it's achieved a certain level of smoothness, but to get it really silky smooth so that it's the kind of chocolate that melts in your mouth, it goes through this additional grinding process called conching. And at this point, also, a lot of chocolate makers will add a certain amount of cocoa butter back in with their cacao mass. And the reason for that is really, again, about mouthfeel and the smoothness of the final product. Also, higher end chocolates tend to have a higher percentage of cocoa butter in them. So something that we call couverture chocolate, which is the chocolate that most chocolatiers will use to make their products, is chocolate that has a higher cocoa butter content to it. So it creates a smoother finish, it is more stable at higher temperatures, and it melts more smoothly as well. So just on the left side of the screen, you'll see the upper picture is the cocoa mass or the cocoa solid. So that's after it's gone through the grinding process and the cocoa butter, the fat has been removed. And underneath it is what cocoa butter looks like. The fat in and of itself really looks like any other fat, honestly. Just so you can see like once they're separated out. So it may seem kind of funny that it's like first they're, taking all the pieces apart and then putting them back together, but that's really the process by which chocolate makers can make different, chocolate with different types of characteristics. If you ever seen on a chocolate bar, it'll also say, like 60% or 80% or what have you. So what that refers to is the percentage of the cacao mass or the cocoa solids, which is the brown part, in relation to everything else. So if you have a bar that's, let's say 70%, it says on it. So that bar is 70% cacao mass, the brown part, and the other 30% is most likely going to be a combination of cocoa butter, sugar, possibly an emulsifier like a lecithin, and that's maybe a vanilla also, like as a flavoring. Chocolates like milk chocolate, for example, would be a lower percentage. So typically milk chocolate is in the like 35 to 45% range, because you've got 35 to 45% cacao solids. And then the rest of it, again, you have the sugar, you may have an emulsifier, cocoa butter, but you also have the milk solids added in, which is what makes it milk chocolate and, gives it that flavor. So after it's gone through all that, then we're almost at the last step, which is called tempering. You may have heard this term before as well, but just in a nutshell, chocolate has a 6 crystal chemical structure. So we're getting a little science here. And tempering really is the process of melting out 5 of those crystal types and leaving the last one, which is called the beta crystal. And what the reason for that is because that beta crystal gives the chocolate the characteristics that chocolatiers are looking for. So that beta crystal creates a shiny finish. It creates, as I mentioned, it's more stable at higher temperatures. If you ever break a bar of chocolate in half and it's just like a clean break, that means that the chocolate has been well tempered. If it's like crumbling to pieces, it's not well tempered or it came out of temper. And also it'll melt more smoothly and evenly, either in your mouth or wherever else you're melting it. So you can see on the left-hand side, what that person is doing is he's tempering the chocolate in a process called table tempering. So you melt the chocolate, you pour it out onto a table, usually like a marble slab, and you move it back and forth, which brings down the temperature, which is why he's got a thermometer there. He's monitoring the temperature of the chocolate as he's working, and encourages that crystallization process of the beta crystal to happen. On the right-hand side is an example of an automatic tempering machine, which I'm actually going to show you a real one or a live one in a minute. And that takes the chocolate through that whole process of lowering the of increasing the temperature, lowering the temperature, the agitation, all those components that are necessary for well-tempered chocolate. So when you're doing larger production, having automatic tempering at your disposal is a real luxury. And I can tell you from personal experience, it makes a tremendous difference in your efficiency and how you're able to work. So then after you've got your chocolate tempered, then it's time to make your final products. So there's different kinds of chocolate. If you see on the far right, they're making chocolate bars there. So basically the tempered chocolate is poured into those polycarbonate plastic molds. They're set. The chocolate will all then crystallize, and then at that point they're ready to be unmolded, and they would just fall easily out of the mold. On the far left, you see bonbons being made. So it's a chocolate shell inside each cavity of the mold, and the person there is putting in filling. It could be a ganache, looks like to me, but chocolatiers will put in caramels, ganaches, fruit fillings, whatever. And in the middle is an example of one of the bonbons that I make here. And you can see that that's sort of the end result of what's happening on the left. The color on the bonbons is actually cocoa butter, which is, as I mentioned before, the fat from the cacao bean that's had color added to it. So unfortunately, most of the time those colors are synthetic, although more and more of the manufacturers of the colored cocoa butter are, they're trying more and more to go towards plant-derived colors, which is something I'm all in favor of. It's really the only ingredient or product that we use here that isn't completely natural. So that's the sacrifice we make for beauty, right? Beauty hurts. And that is basically how cacao is grown and processed from the very beginning to the moment that you put it in your mouth. And if you guys will bear with me for a moment, I would love to give you a little bit of a tour of our facility here. I'm actually going to just switch briefly from my computer here to my phone. So
while you're doing that, I'm going to ask the question that came up. May I deduce from what you're saying that lower priced chocolates have lower cocoa butter content?
You may deduce that. That's typically accurate to say. That what they will also typically have is hydrogenated oils that are added in place of the cocoa butter, which is more expensive. So they're trying to achieve a similar mouthfeel and a similar quality, but at a lower cost. So they're going to add like palm oil or hydrogenated oil instead of cocoa butter. Also, lower quality chocolate will also often have more sugar in it than higher quality chocolate, because sugar, in addition to being sweet, it also acts as a preservative. So especially in sort of mass-produced chocolates where shelf life is an issue, those typically will have a higher sugar content so that they can, sit on a supermarket shelf or what have you for longer periods of time without, going bad, so to speak. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears here for just a moment. Just bear with me. Okay, can you guys see me?
We do. Just make sure to turn off your microphone on the other computer,
yes.
On your computer.
Yes. Okay, is that better?
Much better, yes.
Great, okay, sorry about that. All right, so I'm going to take you on a little tour. I'm actually going to first go to the, oops, hang on a second. I just want to make sure, do you see me or do you see the computer screen?
We see you.
Okay. All right, so do you see, again, I apologize for my novice technological skill here, but I'm hoping that you see the storefront at this point.
Yep. We
Okay.
see somebody standing there.
That's my husband. That's Ori. Ori, you can wave.
Hello,
he was gracious enough to come and man the shop so that I could do this presentation with you guys. So this is our little storefront, and we actually started out I didn't start out intending to do retail. It kind of happened about a year and a half into our business, but it's actually been a really nice boon for us because it's a lovely way for me to really get to know our customers one-on-one and, get a sense of the community. And you can just see here in the display case some of the bonbons that we make. And I am going to take you, and here's some bars that we do as well. I'm going to take you back to the kitchen. All right. So here we go. So back here is our production kitchen. This is Shirley's. Shirley's, you can wave and say hi, everybody. So I will first just show you, this here is our chocolate refrigerator. So this is a refrigerator that's made specifically for storing chocolate. So it's temperature and humidity controlled, both two very important factors in maintaining chocolate's integrity. You can see, some of the finished product that we have. There's that one that was in the picture. We've got some nice truffles going on here as well. So this is kind of where everything ends up before it goes to the display case or gets shipped out in packages. This rack here is sort of where we have things in progress or in production. And also we do some experiments, or I do some experiments. This is chocolate. It looks like agate stone, but it's actually chocolate. So this was a cool technique that I learned from someone else, and I wanted to give it a go. Again, just to give you a sense of the kitchen space. So this machine here, that's this big drum, is called a panning machine, P-A-N-N-I-N-G. And what that does is it makes chocolate covered things. So I make chocolate covered hazelnuts, berries, you could do popcorn, all kinds of different things. You put it in the machine and it rotates. And then you slowly in increments add chocolate in, and that will, coat the product. This blows cool air, and you can turn it off or turn it on depending on what stage in the process you're at. This is a relatively small, it's a tabletop tempering machine. The big companies that are making, M&Ms and stuff, they have, a panning machine. They have panning machines that are probably the size of, half this room actually, you can stand in it. So this is just like a little snapshot of big chocolate production. And here is the chocolate tempering machine that I mentioned a few moments ago. So this is, again, relatively small, but it's a 25 kilogram drum, if you can see, of chocolate in there. It's got a baffle, it's called, it's constantly rotating. And then this is a steady stream of chocolate. It is not solid, it's actually chocolate that's going through there. This is what I use to do all of our main production. It's got a little foot pedal so I can stop and start the flow of the chocolate. So everyone who comes in here and sees us, they just want to stick their mouth right under that stream, but I don't think the health department would be too happy, so we don't do that. And then here is my painting station. So when I paint the chocolate molds and do different designs, the cocoa butter, this is what I was referring to. So you can see there's tons of colors. I also mix my own. And this is, where the kind of artistic, fun, creative part comes in. And this is our little chocolate production space. So I hope you guys enjoy the little tour. Happy to answer any other questions you have.
Thank you very much. And I invite everybody to open their microphones, their cameras, ask your questions, throw them into the chat. Josh, I took off your camera so we could see Miriam better, but we'd love to have you come back. Where do you order most of your chocolate from?
It's a great question. So the vast majority of the chocolate that I use, it's from a company in Italy, actually, called Agostoni. They're a family-owned company. They've been around about 80 years, and they work directly with specific farmers in Central and South America. So one of the things that's very important to me in terms of sourcing our ingredients and our products is to make sure that everything is traceable. Chocolate production, unfortunately, has a long history of child labor abuse, farmer exploitation, a lot of environmental degradation. So I'm very particular and specific that all the chocolate we use is organic and fair trade, ensuring that none of these bad practices are taking place. And as I was telling Jora and Ronnie and Josh earlier, I'm actually in the process of developing a line of single origin bars as well. So it's a lot of fun. I've gotten samples literally from all over the world that I've been tasting, and you know, going to decide like which ones I'm going to start out with. But again, using the same criteria, like it has to be fair trade, it has to be organic, it has to taste amazing, obviously, has to be kosher. So there's a lot of boxes to check, but thankfully that there's really a lot of amazing chocolate out there to be had for the taking.
You have any from Jamaica?
I don't, but
I know that's why Ainsley is from Jamaica. That's why I was
awesome.
bringing that up.
Fabulous. Yeah, I don't yet, but I'll put that one on the list for sure.
Wait, Ainsley, you're on mute. So if you unmute yourself, you can talk. You have to open your microphone, Ainsley.
My comment was simple. The best chocolate cocoa comes from Jamaica.
From Jamaica, I'm not surprised. I'm going to have to find a producer there and order as well.
I'll arrange it for you.
There you go.
Thank you.
See, that was worth the whole thing. There you
go. Absolutely.
Carolyn just left, but she had a question.
I'm here.
Okay, we just don't see you. Okay, you can ask.
You lost my image. I'll try to get that back. Yeah. Okay. First of all, thank you for that factory tour. That was absolutely delightful. I've never seen anything like it before, and it was very enlightening. But I have a question on the history. And I was looking for a particular thing because it's the mass production of chocolate. And I noticed there was a gap in the history discussion. Other people may have not noticed it, but I did because I had been doing workshops on using the chocolate bar for the students learning about mass production and the Industrial Revolution in the late 19th century, early 20th century. And I had concentrated on the Hershey bar as being a product rather than U.S. Steel, because kids like chocolate better than they like steel. And Hershey had cornered he bought the machinery for it right off the floor of a World's Fair in the United States, and decided he was going to be from a little candy maker to this mass production. He cornered the sugar market in Cuba. I've done cursory research, and I think somebody should do real serious research on whether that had anything to do with the dealing with the Spanish-American War and the United States involvement in the Spanish-American War to protect his sugar interests. He built a railroad to get the sugar to the port. And I was watching carefully on the period of that time, and there was a jump from before this period and World War II, post-World War II, and you got to Elite and Barton's chocolate. Were there any Jewish involvement? I knew nothing about Jewish involvement before this lecture was announced, so I started to read on it myself. Was there any Jewish involvement in the mass production of chocolate at the time of Milton Hershey?
Josh, I think that question's yeah.
I'll have to research that further and be happy to get your contact details and let you know.
Thank you.
Or you can give it to me and I'll send it to everybody if you have the answer. That would be fine. Beth had a question. And it's to you, Miriam. How did you embark on your journey? And well, the store is located in Englewood. But the question is, how did you embark on your journey? Englewood, New Jersey, sorry.
Yeah. And by the way, we ship all over the country, so you can always order online, and we ship everywhere. Just so I always wanted to work in food. I always, since I was probably 11 or 12 years old, I've been messing around in the kitchen, doing things my mom gave me kind of free range. And I wanted to go to culinary school after I finished high school, but instead I went to school for architecture, and that's what I did my degree in. And again, as I said before, I worked for about 25 years, first in architecture, then in technology. And about 5 years ago, I finally had the chance to go to culinary school. This was after sort of like a series of various life changes and things. And I grabbed that opportunity because I felt I had waited long enough. And so about, like I said, 5 years ago, I went to school, started Coco Jolie about 3 years ago, and first started out by renting space, in a catering company. So working out of their kitchen. And that's actually one of the reasons that the business was primarily online to begin with, is because we were just selling directly online, farmers markets, pop-up shops, things like that. And then we sort of outgrew that space and moved to the current location. And I've been here about 1.5 years as well. So it's been about a 25 to 30-year journey, I would say. But all the steps along the way, while I maybe wanted to go to do this right after high school, I would say that all the steps along the way have definitely contributed to my ability to run a business, to experience with marketing and technology and all these different things. So everything, or some things happen for a reason, I guess you could say.
And I would just add that Miriam's story is shared by so many other chocolate makers and chocolatiers that I came across in putting together the book. So inspiring. And as I mentioned, often family businesses, husband, wife, mother and daughter, several generations. And they're all also passionate, and it's wonderful stories, each one of them.
Yeah, I was actually talking to a chocolatier in New Hampshire the other day. He was a physicist before he became a chocolatier, so go figure.
Well, thank you both very, very much, and thank you all for coming. Now I want some chocolate, but everybody have a good rest of your day or evening or wherever you are in the world. We hope to see you next week as we explore Egypt. Have a good day.